If it's not one God, it's another. Allah or oil, Jesus or Jews, Lenin or lust. Vincent, oil is the altar at which the global economy worships it.
Yes, it is. And that is a big problem right now. Welcome to the Atlantic Current, everybody. I'm Vince Martin from Wall Street, Maine. Here, as always, with Toll McAdoo from the Irish Politics newsletter. As we are recording this, Toll, Brent crude, 4-year high. American gasoline prices, 4-year high. Irish petrol prices have already started. Nationwide protests / riot / political movement, and it's only getting worse, right?
Yes, there's no abatement to this oil crisis that we're going through at the moment. What's the price of a gallon of diesel, petrol, gasoline in the United States at the moment, Vincent?
I think the average they're reporting this morning is now well past 4. So we're going back to kind of the worst of the Biden era inflation, and as we said, it moves politics because you see it every day. The prices of other products are not posted on giant signs next to the street as they are, particularly here in America. So yeah, rumblings of discontent, I think, are only going to get louder about affordability, about inflation, and gas is going to kind of be the avatar of that.
Right. It peaked at $126 a barrel this morning, West Cork time. And an interesting little caveat for you there, Vincent, that what country in the world do you think has introduced the most support in terms of taxpayer support, farmer support, haulage support, trying to relieve the financial burden on the economy?
I know it ain't us. So.
Well, yes, it's Ireland now.
Yeah,
we don't exactly have the most left-wing government in the world. We're not socialists. We're not communists over here in Ireland, despite what Donald Trump might tell you sometimes.
Are you on Twitter? Because that's not the story they're telling either.
The Irish government has introduced the strongest measures in terms of trying to relieve pain for the taxpayer at the pump. We've slashed the price of oil, the price of diesel, and people are still giving out that it's not enough. There's elements of our political oppositions. They seem to be ignoring the fact there's a massive war going on, okay? Trump appears to be willing to maintain the US Navy's blockade of Iranian ports, and Iran is responding by keeping the Straits of Hormuz all but shut to all tankers. And people seem to not be able to get their heads around the fact there's a war on in the Middle East, and they have their hands out, giving the poor out. I don't realise actually Ireland has been probably one of the countries least affected by this oil crash because of government supports.
Is it different this time around? We said it's a 4-year high. 4 years ago, oil prices went to the same level, but that, of course, was driven by the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Did the citizenry, did politicians in Ireland react the same way, or is there more indignation about this because it's a different kind of action and perhaps maybe in this case, in some sense, the good guys are starting this rather than the bad guys?
I don't think it matters who started it, Vincent. I don't think Trump as a factor is playing into this. I think that the war in Ukraine that caused the last oil shock was, it was a relatively short and sharp crash. Numbers came back down quite quickly relative to this.
Okay,
to this
that's
crisis.
A big change, right?
Okay, this is a more prolonged crash, and all the doomsayers, all the spooks, all the financial traders, they're all predicting very bad things to come down the line. And I genuinely think people don't realize how it's actually going to get much worse. And again, the government have given a massive bailout now to hauliers and farmers, and even the taxpayer got a bit of relief at the pump. But things are going to get much worse, so I wonder how much longer the government can keep bailing people out. The only people that seem to be making any money from this is commodity traders, Vincent.
Yeah, and as we're going to talk about in just a minute, the oil company executives too. We've heard from them this week.
Will Trump bail out the American taxpayer at the pump in regards to this war?
Here's the problem. He can't, because he has spent this entire time saying, oh no, prices are going to come back down in a hurry. This is going to be over quick, and then prices are going to go back down. That's been his story, and we've talked about that before. And I don't think that's not a political story. that is what he believes. That is how he thinks the industry works. So he can't come out with a package that includes, for instance, a moratorium on the federal gasoline tax, because that in and of itself is an admission that the story he's telling for 2 months is false. And so no Republican in Congress can come out and do that for the same reason. Trump, I think, really believes that is how this is going to play out, that it's going to be short term. We talked about this a month ago or so. His energy secretary went to a major energy conference, right? And prices were high. They weren't this high. But he's talking to all these producers. He says, hey, look, high prices are a signal. You guys need to go drill. And we both made the point, they're not going to do that. I gave a long explanation of kind of the recent history of oil and gas. We've actually put that up as a clip on YouTube, and we'll link to that in Substack in the show notes. But basically, the short version is these CEOs that run these oil companies have promised their major investors for 3-4 years now that we're not going to play the cyclical game. We're not going to chase higher prices. We're not going to ramp production and drill ourselves into another bust. And we had a couple reports this week from actually British producers. The 2 U.S. majors report Friday morning, but BP was one. Ironically enough, BP can trace its roots to the Anglo-Persian oil company, believe it or not. That was founded, in 1909. So they have a long history in the region, and they came out, their profits more than doubled against the first quarter last year. Actually, most of that money, though, came from trading, not from actually producing and selling oil at a higher price. You know, we've alluded to this before. Volatility is really good for traders on Wall Street or at the big energy desks.
And for traders in the White House, Vincent.
That's fair.
Just to touch on something about federal gas tax, it's what? It's 18.4 cents per gallon, which is nothing. No. You have it so easy compared to Ireland. 60% of the price of a litre of petrol and diesel is, it's made up of tax. Now, I do believe that your state taxes, are average about 32 cents per gallon or something like that, so that adds a lot to it. But your federal taxes are only 18.4 cents for gas and 24 cents per diesel. That's for nothing. Nothing.
And the way that system originally was set up, federal gas tax was supposed to fund the construction and maintenance of interstate highways that the federal government builds, which makes perfect sense, right? I mean, if the people who are driving pay a tax that then goes to improve and build the roads that they're driving on. And I don't think it's been raised for like 30 years.
That's right.
It's a perfectly logical program. As you said, it's not that much. It's such a minor but perfect representation of American political dysfunction.
The taxes haven't been raised since 1993 is what the internet tells me. And the internet wouldn't lie to me now, would it, Vincent?
No, it wouldn't. And I didn't lie to you too. I just want to make the point. Come on, that was pretty good that I pulled that one right. Yeah. But again, like we haven't raised that. It really should be based on spending. It should be 50 or 60 cents a gallon. Congress just won't pass it. Even a logical program, we just can't do anything around taxes lately. But yeah, there's not a lot that the federal government can do about gas taxes. And what Trump is learning is there's not a lot the federal government can do about oil prices. So again, BP came out. They said that they're not going to chase production. Their new CEO just came in. Her name is Meg O'Neill.
Irish-American, no doubt.
Of course, yeah. Further proof that Irish-Americans run the world, as we should. She said specifically on the conference call after the earnings report that, quote, when prices are high, we remain disciplined. We continue to have our belt tight on operating expenditure and capital expenditure. And that is legitimately the simplest distillation of the point we've been making for 2 months. Capital expenditure, in particular, is the money that you would spend to develop resources to boost your production. They are not doing it. Let's add one more little bit of emphasis. It's not coincidental that she is making that point on her first call as CEO, right? This is the first time she's had to speak to Wall Street publicly, and she is going out of her way to tell the story that the entire industry is telling. We've got other smaller companies saying the same thing. Shell made an acquisition of a Canadian producer this week. They said the same thing. Trump has been completely and totally wrong.
Yes. I've written about this. We live in oil, Vincent. It's in everything.
Yeah.
Everything we touch, see, use every day. And at the moment, Western Europe and the United States has been relatively insulated from the worst of the crash. And I know from talking to politicians here in Ireland, they've been briefed privately that things are going to get much, much worse.
Yeah.
That we need to brace ourselves here. So it's not over by a long shot. And just touching on O'Neill, for her to reach the very top of what's a very male-dominated industry in the oil executive world, I'd imagine she's one of the very few oil CEOs in the world, probably the only one, if I'm guessing.
There's a woman who runs Occidental Petroleum, which is another big one. But yeah, it is rare. It's unusual.
She's an Irish American to watch for the future, Vincent.
Yeah, we all are.
Yes. You as well, Vincent. You as well. Up and coming young buck like yourself. Now, Vincent, there's consequences to this oil crash and there are political ramifications, and not just for Trump, but here in Ireland also. There's a Red C poll out last weekend, and the state of the government parties is not looking great. Now, say we go back 100 years, okay? Back to 1926. Okay, so Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil would have had about 85-90% of the vote share. And decade on decade on decade, it's been declining ever since. And now it stands at 33%. It's the lowest the government parties have ever been in the history of the state. So Fine Gael has fallen to 16%. It's lowest ever recorded in the polls.
Wow.
Fianna Fáil are unchanged at 16 as well. But this is the lowest Fine Gael has ever been in the polls. Now, they've been in government for 14 years. Now, if you're government for 14 years, you kind of expect this almost.
Yeah.
There's going to be churn there. You're going to get voted out. No party's been in power, for that long, for a long time. We have to go back to Bertie Ahern era for that. And there's a psychological thing here, right? If Fine Gael go below 15%, I think Simon Harris is going to be in a spot of bother. There's a psychological barrier there. Now, there's mutterings going on in the background about his leadership. That, foot soldier level, I suppose, for want of a better word. I'm not sure that's feeding into the elected representatives yet, but if Fine Gael go below that 15%, you're going to see a lot of noise, I think, in Irish politics. But I think Fine Gael, unless they get the finger out, they're going to get wiped out at the next general election, I think. It's going to be a very, very, very bad day for the party. Now, Sinn Féin, the main party of opposition, are gone up to 25%, which is remarkable because this government is deeply unpopular and they still can only manage 25%. So,
yeah,
the public doesn't have a whole lot of confidence in these people also. And the primary movers in the fuel protest actually only went up about 1 or 2%. Would you believe?
Yeah, I guess from the outside, that actually does make a lot of sense. And those movements like that tend to capture attention. They don't always capture voters. Obviously, our system is different in so many ways, but that does kind of remind me of the Tea Party in the sense that the Tea Party, which was a movement on the right coming out of the financial crisis, changed Republicans, but I don't think they captured too many incremental voters. They were just simply more motivating people who were kind of already on their side.
Yes, and that's probably the case as well. They have their constituency, and that's it. I think it's about 8 or 9% at the moment.
Right.
But
yeah.
Irish politics is incredibly fractured at the moment, and the fuel protest is fueling this. And there's every day there's a story about government waste now in the papers. Every day, every single day and I've never remembered it being so sustained as well. So we have, a lot of questions about a leading charity around here and their financial activities. We have the National Children's Hospital that was meant to be 680 million and it's up at 2 billion now, and it still hasn't been handed over. We'll be doing this podcast in 2050 and there's a good chance the hospital still won't be handed over.
Yeah.
OPW, the Office of Public Works, spending money. My eyes are watering about the amount of waste that's going on in Irish society at the moment. But what's been spent, and we're not getting bang for our buck, I suppose, for want of a better word. There's something about it that reminds me of maybe 2005 and 2006. House prices are very expensive. People are struggling to get on the property ladder. The Irish Times was reporting yesterday that the last time as many mortgages were drawn down in 2026 so far, we haven't seen since pre-crash levels, 2007, right? When I saw that, I said 2007. I went, oh God, that brings back memories.
Yeah, that's an alarm bell.
There's a very pre-Celtic Tiger crash vibes around Ireland at the moment. And I don't know if I'm the only person picking up on it, but we've been here before. I've seen this before. I have the same vibes, every day. Government waste, prices out of control. I saw an economist say she paid €12 for a sandwich in Dublin recently. Okay. Quite frankly, I wouldn't be getting advice from anybody that pays €12 for a sandwich, to be perfectly honest.
Well, what kind of sandwich?
I don't know. I haven't a clue.
I mean, honestly, because we have a chain called Jersey Mike's, which is actually coming to the UK and Ireland for listeners, and they're outstanding.
Well, who are these people? Tell me more.
Jersey Mike's. They are a classic American deli that started in New Jersey, as the name suggests. They now have over 3,000 locations here. They're a corporate version of, the local deli that you would find mostly in the Northeast. That's kind of more of a Northeastern thing, but fresh slice lunch meat. Yeah, with the exception that Subway is prepackaged, pre-sliced garbage, and Jersey Mike's kind of positions itself as quality. It's kind of the difference between Subway is McDonald's, Jersey Mike's would be, I'm trying to think of like the chain that would have global. I don't know. I guess we don't export quality food globally. Only garbage. I can't think of one. But Jersey Mike's is coming to Ireland. But their sandwiches now are, the one I get, I think, is 13, 14. So that's in the €12 range.
Right. Okay. But I'd never heard of anybody paying €12 for a sandwich in Ireland, to be perfectly honest.
Now, is it one of those Circle K chicken and stuffing sandwiches? Because as much as I love those, I don't think €12 is quite an appropriate price.
No, and let me tell you, I'm not sure there's chicken in those Circle K sandwiches either.
I don't care. I don't care.
I think it's ex-employees or something like that. Right, I'm joking for the lawyers that are listening. That is a joke, right?
That's like the discussion we always have in America about hot dogs. You're like, oh, it's a good hot dog. And someone always has to go, do you know what's in hot dogs? No, I have no idea what's in hot dogs. I have a sense of what it is, and I don't want to think about it. Let me enjoy my hot dog.
Yeah, no. Right, so we're fracturing. Irish politics is fracturing.
That was a detour. Sorry, everyone.
Pre-Celtic Tiger vibes about this, so I'm going to start putting my money under the mattress instead of the bank, Vincent.
Fair enough. Waste is in the news cycle here, and waste and fraud and all these sorts of things. It's like, you guys don't have cicadas, do you?
What are they?
Let's go on another detour. They're insects we have, and one form of the cicada is an insect that goes underground for 17 years.
Right, I feel like doing that.
And then they all come out one year, and it's just a mess. Like one year when I was a kid, I remember you were riding your bike down the street, and the street was literally covered with dead insects. Like you were crunching through the sea of dead cicadas. But my point was that waste discussions here are kind of like cicadas. They go underground, and then every couple of years they pop back up, and they're in the news, and then we all forget how much waste there is, and it comes back. Is it that way in Ireland, or does the waste here kind of feel structurally different than it used to?
It does feel a little bit structurally different, and the reason why is because we're awash with American dollars, pharma dollars.
Oh, right, yeah.
We've loads of money. We must be the only country in Europe taking in loads of money from another country at such levels, to be perfectly honest. The story is always the same. The left says we should spend more money, and the right says we should be, putting away for a rainy day. I think the rainy day is upon us, but you're seeing stupid money being spent. And you say about charity fraud there's a charity at the moment, and it's been accused of moving its money from one jurisdiction to another illegally, as was claimed in the Irish Times this morning. And a politician asked me to research one or two more other charities for him. And when I started digging around in the records, my eyes were lolling in my head. I can tell you, there's some very weird financial activity going on in the charity sector in Ireland. And what they are essentially is they're subcontractors for the Health Service Executive of Ireland. Okay. And they're just doing jobs the health service isn't able to provide for citizens themselves. So they subcontract it out, and they call them charities. And they're not charities, they're taxpayer-funded subcontractors, essentially.
Right.
So there's a lot of duplication in these charities. So, for example, Ireland has, population, 5 million people or thereabouts, and there's 54 autism charities in the last 10 years.
Wow. Yeah.
54. Right? And this is excluding actually autism support services in hospitals and in the community. This is excluding all these. There's a huge amount of money gone into services for children with special needs and that kind of stuff. And that, just so people, I'm not, punching down on people that need these services. But I wonder why we need 54 of them.
Yeah.
Scattered across the country, So there's a lot of duplication going on there. There's a lot of money being sucked into these services. And I'm not sure it's the most efficient use of money.
I mean, that's not surprising when you have that fire hose of money. That's a story that's not unique to Ireland, certainly.
Yes, we can blame I can blame the Americans for that. Yes, your pharma dollars ruining us.
Yeah. Well, you just do what we do and just pretend none of it matters. $2 trillion budget deficit, it's fine. Yeah, it'll all work out in the end.
Whether people like it or not, Ireland is a vassal state of the United States financially. So if that tap was turned off in the morning, we'd be back to penury, and I'd be coming to live with you to North Carolina, Vincent. That's the reality of the situation. If those taps were turned off in the morning, Ireland would be properly smoked.
Right.
So that's my worry at the moment. We're back to kind of I have these pre-Celtic Tiger crash vibes, and it's weighing heavily on my shoulders. I'll write something dark about it, I think.
There's kind of an interesting juxtaposition, contradiction there, in the sense that you're kind of comparing things to 2005, 2006, which were boom times, and yet you're also saying that the populace is so disgruntled that the two major parties have historically low vote shares, which as an American, that has an echo. As much as people complain here, there actually is a lot to like in America right now. Economically, it is split. Let's be clear. Not everyone is kind of joining in the fun, but even for people on the bottom, the jobs are there. The economy is not terrible. Until recently, gas prices were okay. Crime is down. We've talked about that. It's 125-year low. We don't have a system that would allow for the Republicans and Democrats to wind up with a 1/3 vote share combined. But I don't think their approval rating is much different than that of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. I'm not sure quite sure how you explain that broader trend, which, if you poke around, actually seems to be somewhat global, at least in the West. People are in better shape in a lot of cases than they've been, and they have a lot more opportunity than they've ever had, and yet they're kind of more disgruntled than they've ever been. And, there's probably a lot of ways you could take that, whether that's social media, whether that's, people kind of being selfish, or whether that is a sense, and that may be a sense here that I think gets to what you're talking about, that a little bit of foreboding. The people go, okay, yeah, well, things are good now, but there are real big troubles on the horizon. And what those troubles are depends on who you're talking to. But people are worried in a way that a sort of macroeconomic model would suggest that they're not.
Yes, Vincent, we've never had it so good, but things feel so bad.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you for doing that. I just spoke for 90 seconds and you just said it better than I did in 7 words. So well done.
Yes. I have a way with words, Vincent. I passed 10,000 subscribers on the Irish Politics newsletter recently.
Congratulations, sir. Outstanding.
Pat myself on the back, yes.
Yeah.
I've never had it so good, but
you have it good when it goes bad. That's the great thing about politics, right? It's the people feel the more money you make.
That makes me sound a cynical person, Vincent.
I didn't say you were cynical. You're providing a public service to those people. I'm just saying that's just kind of how it goes.
Well, just for the record, Vincent's correct. I'm a deeply cynical person. So I think there's an element of plague in all your houses in modern political discourse at the moment, and has been going that way for the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. And I think there's an element of Trump unleashing that inner nihilism in people. It's a case of they're sick of the same old. They're looking for an off-ramp, something different, something a little bit more radical, because there is a realization here in Ireland that young people are struggling to get on the housing market. And if they have nowhere to live and they're sitting at home in their parents' bedroom still, Their parents are annoyed. They're annoyed. They've probably bought a car. So there's 12 cars in the driveway,
Right.
blocking up the road. They're fighting with their neighbours. There's all these macro socio-economic impacts of the housing market, a dysfunctional housing market. And I think the government is reaping what's been sowed. And I keep talking about the crash. After the crash, we didn't build houses. We went from building 90,000 houses a year to, 10,000 houses.
Right.
With a population booming like ours, that was never going to work.
And I think that echoes a little bit of something here too, a sense among young people that the American dream is over,
Well,
that they are missing out. And the American dream, simply put, is basically that you live better than your parents did. And that's supposed to be the promise of America. And the resentment you see against, quote, the boomers, which you hear a lot about on social media. I think AI is really starting to feed into that. People are in college or just out of college, do not have confidence that they're going to have a job for 10 years, let alone 40 years.
yes.
There's just a lot of upheaval there. And Trump absolutely was seen as a kind of radical change for people who are dissatisfied with both parties. But he also, you say he unleashed it. My first instinct was like, that sounds a little overwrought. But he was certainly the first American politician, and I would imagine one of the very few major politicians in all of the West, to explicitly say that both parties were useless, corrupt, fraudulent, decadent, all these sorts of words. I mean, when he said drain the swamp, he was talking about Washington, D.C. He was not talking about one side of the House of Representatives, right? Yeah, I think that sense absolutely is a big reason why people flocked to him early in his candidacy, and I think it has helped sustain him. It has helped insulate him from even criticisms in his own party, because a lot of his supporters and a lot of Americans don't trust his party anyway. So it's sort of Trump's on one side and the Republican Party's on the other. People don't really feel that's a difficult choice in the way that they would have for, let's say, George H.W. Bush or something like that.
Right, yes. You use the words decadent, corrupt, fraudulent. You could have been talking about Trump there himself, Vincent.
I did not realize that I just walked you right into that.
Yes,
just cleared a path with a bulldozer, but you're welcome.
Yes. All those things that Trump used to describe the swamp in Washington, he could have been standing in the mirror talking to himself.
Look, who among us hasn't been president and have their kids make a couple $1 billion in them? 18
We've
months.
all been there.
Yeah, it's just a thing. So let's return to the swamp and our old friend Donald Trump. We talked last week about this interview Kash Patel gave on Fox News, and I kind of said that really accelerated the fear that I've had about the November midterms. I was kind of thinking we could do like a weekly feature, kind of do like the deep, scary Fox News voice. I'm like, midterms,
right?
Midterm mania. I do that every week, but I don't know if we should necessarily be joking about the end of the American Republic. So we'll save that for now. But the story there, James Comey, former director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the agency Kash Patel now heads, indicted by the Trump Justice Department for threats against the president. I think most listeners know the story, so I don't need to preface by saying it's not satire, but it kind of does. When you say the words out loud, he posted on Instagram a picture of himself on a beach in the great state of North Carolina with seashells in front of him that spelled out 8647.
Vincent, I know what 47 is. What does he
right.
47 is Donald J. Trump, 47 President of the United States. But what does the 86 mean?
Well, what 86 means is now part of the political debate. But the historic meaning of 86 is, as a restaurant term, I worked in restaurants for on and off for about 8 years when I was younger. And 86 in a restaurant means we're out of. So, crazy Saturday night, you'd come in the kitchen at 8:30 and the chef would be yelling, 86 salmon, 86 salmon. The term comes from a speakeasy in Manhattan, believe it or not. And it was at Bedford and Barrow in the West Village, and one of their doors was 86 Bedford, I believe. And during Prohibition, they'd get tipped off that the cops were coming to raid the place. And they had 2 exits. So they would yell, 86 to customers, which was send the customers out the 86 exit while the cops came in the other one. And if you went to it after, I've been there a few times, they still had the false bookcase that covered the hallway to get the people out that they had built during Prohibition. It was a really neat historic place. All these writers went there. Unfortunately, it has since closed, but that's where 86 comes from. And it has this meaning. Trump and his supporters are arguing, and now apparently the Justice Party are arguing 86 means get rid of in a more violent way. Trump said this week that it's a mob term that means to kill somebody.
And he'd know a bit about mobs, don't he? He dallianced with them in the 80s in New York, I believe.
He should have some familiarity with mob language. Unfortunately, when he defended it, he said, hey, have you ever seen the movies? 86 them, kill them. And so, of course, everybody went to whatever their AI model was. It's like, are there any movies where mobsters say 86? And they're, nope. He's just pulling that one out. So that is the debate, whether this is a legitimate threat. And as always, you can go down the rabbit hole with all this stuff. And he had a book that came out, and people on the right are saying that this novel he wrote proves his intent and all these sorts of things. And
novels is a work of fiction, is it? Because I read it was at A Higher Loyalty, his best-selling book. It was a book in Ireland as well. It was a good read, in fairness. So he wrote a book of fiction also, did he? This
is like a crime novel that involves the law enforcement officer chasing down a threat against the president. So people on the right are going, oh, look, he posted this, and then the next day he posted post promoting his book about a threat against the president. Obviously, he meant this as a threat. They're also saying, quite amusingly, that the fact that he deleted the post is evidence that he meant it as a death threat. Like, that's an admission of guilt, which that's not how social media works, everybody. Sometimes you delete posts because you said something stupid and you don't want it out there, or because you're getting screamed at, or because people took it the wrong way. I shudder to think of what happens if the Department of Justice starts investigating everybody who deletes a social media post, because you and I are both in trouble. I know.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not getting into the United States to visit you anytime soon, Vincent, not till Trump's out of office anyway.
Every episode we do, your arrival in the United States gets kicked back like 6 months.
No, I watched the press conference because I had no life, obviously. Apart from talking to you, I have absolutely zero going on in my life.
No, you watched the press conference because you care so deeply about that you wanted to make sure you researched every possible angle of this hugely important topic.
I did, and I watched Kash Patel, and he was sober. So now his eyes were popping out of his head as usual. I don't know what that's about, but he was sober, and he said that the grand jury heard evidence that Comey deleted the 8647 post and apologised for it. Okay? But neither fact appears in this indictment. It's a fairly flimsy fear for Vincent. I don't see how he's going to get found guilty of this, to be perfectly honest. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal expert. I didn't even know what 86 meant till you told me. I kind of thinking to myself, Trump is mad. And it just goes to show the Justice Department are doing his bidding. And quite frankly, they should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, and that's why this ties into the midterms, even though it doesn't seem like it on its front, because absolutely, the DOJ is doing his bidding. And Todd Blanche, who is running the DOJ, he is the interim attorney general, and he wants the top job. And Trump has said for years that he wants Comey indicted. Implicitly or explicitly, Blanche has to believe that if he wants the top job, he has to get this done, whether it's ridiculous or not. And I agree, as a layman, I think it's ridiculous. And one way we know it's ridiculous is that at the press conference, Blanche said that the investigation took, quote, 9, 10, 11 months, which is, I can't even imagine. It's a single Instagram post with a picture. I cannot imagine how we're devoting, 11 months to this.
A photo of seashells took an 11-month investigation. Well, that just goes to show, I think, how broken the American justice system is at the moment. If you cross, on a more serious note, right? If you cross President Trump, you're in danger of being locked up.
Yeah, of course that's what it is. I mean, it didn't take 11 months to investigate this. I mean, they didn't need to to see if the seashells came here illegally or run DNA analysis or something like that. What this is Trump told Bondi, and Trump actually sent out, I think it was on True Social, wasn't it? He sent out a post that was a message to Bondi. This is last year. He sent to Pam Bondi, who was then the Attorney General. He sent out a post. It went public, and it was just obviously supposed to be a message to her. And he said, I want these people indicted. He did that. Bondi either couldn't do it, couldn't find an attorney willing to go to the grand jury, couldn't find a case that she thought had any chance of winning. She gets fired. Blanche comes in. Then all of a sudden you get an indictment. There's really not any other conclusion to draw. Trump wanted him indicted, and Blanche was willing to do that. And that's how you tie this back to my worries about the midterms. When we wake up on that Wednesday in November after Election Day, and as is almost certainly going to be the case, the polls show an absolute Democratic rout. What is Trump going to say, and what is Donald Trump going to want the Attorney General of the United States to do? What is he going to want the FBI to do in the months leading up to the election? What is he going to want the military to do? The Secretary of Defense was on Congress this week, and they asked, and he goes, Biden sent troops to election places. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? No, state. No, of course not. Governors activated state-level National Guard. That's not what we're talking about. That's not what the question was about. That's not what the concern is. So you just kind of have, all these things are just building. You said this on one of our first podcasts. You talked about people from Europe seeing flashing red lights in the U.S. that showed real concern. We've got more red lights flashing this week. I mean, we can and people will have fun with the 8647 story, but it gets to something darker. It gets to a real concern.
Yes, Vincent, and I share those concerns with you. One side of me is darkly amused that some fella's getting arrested over a post about seashells. On the other side, I'm fearing that the United States is, one or two goose steps away from turning into a military junta.
Yeah. I mean, there's ways this goes really bad. That's the point I've been making. And we are coming up to a pivot point. The thing that's interesting about this is it really highlights a key point here, one that we've made before, which is that the difference between the people around Trump in his second term and in his first term. Bill Barr, who was his attorney general for most of the end of his first term, if Trump went to him, Bill Barr would have just told him to go.
Yeah, jump.
There would have been a couple extras there. No, I'm not doing this. This is not an indictment. Bill Barr, for all his faults, and they were many, I think did have some principles. And people, closer to him, his chief of staffs and things like that, these are people who are trying to rein in his worst impulses and protect the institutions. And those guardrails are all gone. What we see over and over again, whether it's Patel going on Fox News and talking about rigged elections and these indictments and the other indictments that Patel and others are promising, there's nobody saying no to Trump. Instead, that they are all racing to do this to protect their jobs, protect their power. And people said a lot during his first term. Oh, thank God there's some grownups in there. If you see any grownups in there, Toll, you let me know, because I can't find any.
Yeah, I don't see them, Vincent. As a long-time political watcher and noticing the different tics that make people think and make them twitch, make them act, make them behave. This is not an administration, it's a regime.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, yeah.
And of course, what's feeding into all this is the massive amounts of disinformation, Vincent. Disinformation everywhere. Now, there was an Irishman in Bloomberg yesterday. Normally, the only Irishman in Bloomberg is, Ryanair CEO Michael O'Leary. You don't hear of many Irishmen popping up on Bloomberg, Vincent, right?
The Collison brothers make some appearances too, right?
Oh, you do? I'd forgotten about them. Yes. Yeah. Good Munster men, the Collison brothers.
There's a great article from 2020 about Sean Quinn, but I don't know how much time we want to spend on that one.
Well, we're not going to spend any time on it because we'll either get sued or beaten up, one of the two. And that was a joke again for the lawyers. We might get sued on this 2 or 3 times on this podcast, Vincent. Anyway, disinformation. Bloomberg named an Irishman, a fellow called Che Bowes, okay, as one of the top spreaders of disinformation on X. And Bloomberg were claiming that he was aligned with a Russian disinformation unit called Storm 1516. It sounds very Russian and Cold Warish.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a scrappy tech startup, does it?
No, it doesn't. We were going to call our podcast Storm something, where we stormed the Atlantic Storm. So this fellow Che Bose is up there. He's the top 3 spreaders of misinformation on X.
Right.
And he's been called out about it. They showed that, they gave evidence saying that, Che Bose had shared posts that showed ballots being torn up or rigged, or he talks a lot about American politics, he spreads a lot of, sometimes very pro-Trump material as well. And, okay. So, these guys storm 1516 disinformation. The only unique thing about Che Bose is that he's probably the only one they uses his real name. The rest are It's the Doctor, Dangerous Thinking, The Savior, Truth Teller FM, Trump Fact News. Trump Fact News is one of the biggest spreaders of disinformation.
That's disappointing.
But this is all, when you talk about the worries around the midterm elections, all these accounts are amplifying misinformation, and they want to see the United States fall apart. They want to see civil war. They want American global Western capitalism, the liberal order, to collapse in on itself. Right?
Yeah.
They will be fueling the paranoia within the Trump regime that, everybody's out to get them. It's all a con. The election is stolen. And an Irishman is leading the charge here. And
about that?
It's nothing to be proud of. He was kicked out of Romania recently as well. He was planning to meet some activists, pro-Russian activists, and the Romanian authorities picked him up and shipped him back to Russia. They were having none of him. It's kind of worrying. It just goes to show that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, what nationality you are, you can directly influence American elections nefariously.
Yeah. Yeah, that is worrisome. And you got to figure that the power of artificial intelligence is going to, I think, be on display in November. I'm looking forward to AI-generated videos of poll workers, and that is such the Wild West. And it's not something that we're preparing for. And because of it's Trump in the Oval Office, and because at the end of the day, people in the administration are so scared of him, I don't want to belabor the point, but it is something that we've kind of keep talking about, and something that we've said we're going to keep talking about. And this is a good reason why. I think it's a very, very real concern.
No, I came across one American during the week. He wanted to do something quite radical that hasn't been done in US politics before. Maybe it's not since the 16th or 17th century.
He wanted to stand up to Donald Trump in the most, yes, he did, in the most reasonable, logical way possible. Yeah.
Yes, he's accused of creating and lodging forged legal documents because he wanted to raise an army to invade and reclaim the United States for Queen Elizabeth. He wanted to do this from Belfast. Right.
The article doesn't say how much success he had. I don't know if Belfast is necessarily I don't know. Is there a better place on the island? Where would you go if you were trying to raise an army to invade America? Where would you start, though? I think that's the most important question.
You would probably go to Northern Ireland. They have a history of killing each other there for the last 60 years.
Right, that's fair.
There'd be quite dab hands at IEDs, improvised explosive devices and the like, but I'm not sure they're your traditional army sense. Raise a militia to overthrow the shackles of Trumpism. He's from San Antonio in Texas.
He is from Texas, yeah. I was disappointed. He's supposed to be from Florida. American listeners will get that joke. It's a long-running trope in America that anytime someone does something absolutely insane, they're from Florida. You would think you'd have a better chance of raising a militia in Texas than you would in Belfast. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, we have a similar thing here. When people do something mad, we always say, "Oh, sure, he's from Kerry."
Is that what it is? Okay.
I might have made that up, but I'm going to start it now. But no, apparently he presented as an intelligent man with no clear evidence of thought order or psychosis.
You don't want to judge without all the information, right? It's possible the plan was perfectly coherent.
There's no kind of sheen you can put on it, for want of a better word, that could make this plausible or something to be marveled at. He's claiming asylum now as well. I'd be claiming asylum because you see what Trump is doing over Seychelles. This fella's going to the gallows.
Yeah, God forbid this starts trending on Twitter. Hegseth and Trump are going to be sending helicopters into Belfast, grab this guy out of prison so they can hang him on the White House lawn as traitor.
Yes, no, if the Americans are going to come to Belfast, they should probably bring democracy there, like they did in Baghdad and Afghanistan, because the storm at the executive is not functioning very well. It's just, that's in a state of chaos. So the positive note is that there's some Americans out there willing to stand up for Trump and stand before the courts of law of the land, even if it is in Ireland or Northern Ireland, and say, down with this Trumpianism.
That's true.
Right. So, Vincent, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive up north now at the moment, if I don't get cancelled on the way, and I'm going to offer this man my full-throated support to overthrow Trump. This is what I'm going to do.
We'll see if we can get him on the pod. That really would be just an outstanding interview. Like, so many questions. What's the name of your army? That would be my first one, I think. What'd you name the army?
Okay. Do you know what? Let's try and get him on the podcast for the crack.
Okay. I like it. Yeah. Ryan
Frost. Let's find out this Ryan Frost. He's in County Antrim. I'm sure somebody knows him. Ireland's a small place. So, if you don't hear from me, Vincent, I'm training for an insurrection in Northern Ireland to invade the United States of America. Okay?
Or you're in jail next to Ryan Frost. One of the two. Yeah.
Of course. Right. Okay. I'm Tull from the Irish Politics Newsletter.
And I'm Vince Martin. Thanks as always.
Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye now.